إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا بين يدي الساعة اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين اللهم اجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر اللهم آمين. أما بعد فيقول تعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. ويقول تعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, the advice and the reminder that I have for myself first, and then for all of you here today, comes from a story. And this story is from a young man's life at the time of the Prophet Mohamed. A story of a young man that many of us have probably heard before. At least his name, we know his name. But I want to highlight a few details specifically about his life. And the reason I want to highlight these details, because these details highlight two main things. The first is the struggle and the effort that this young man set forth. And the second, how it is that you improve yourself. We learned last week, alhamdulillah, we had our visiting sheikh, my teacher, Mufti Kamani. He came and he visited and he gave a beautiful khutbah about the idea of struggle and effort. Right? Connected. The 10th of Muharram just passed, and we all fasted, highlighting that hijrah, right? This idea of moving, this idea of struggling away from something that is bad towards something that is good. Doing that hijrah, right? And we learned about that last week, alhamdulillah. But the question arises now, what do I put an effort in? I know that I have to put effort, but how do I do that? How do I put effort in the deen? What does that even mean? Do I pray longer? What does that even mean? We learn about that from this young man's story. And this young man's name is Mus'ab. Mus'ab bin Umayr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Many of us know him. Many of us know Mus'ab. A very, very well-known Sahaba. If you don't worry. You're about to learn about him. And if you do, pay attention to the details. To learn about the sacrifice that Mus'ab had to give, you have to know where Mus'ab was, who he was and where he started from. Because that will determine the sacrifice that he sets forth. Let me give you an example. If someone has $0 in their account, and they say, I'm sacrificing and I'm not going to eat for the rest of the day. I mean, certainly there's a sacrifice there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all and our families. Ameen. But the sacrifice, what exactly did that person sacrifice? Did they sacrifice not spending the money they didn't have? You see what I'm saying? As opposed to someone who has wealth, who will say, I will sacrifice the wealth that I have in order to do good. Right? Now, different sacrifice, different situations. I'm just trying to give a brief example to show you that sacrifice is generally determined by what it is that you have to give up. By definition, sacrifice. Right? You have to give up something in order to sacrifice. So in order to understand the sacrifice that Mus'ab had to do, had to give, you have to understand where he came from. That'll help you understand what he had to give up. And so we look back. Mus'ab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was he before Islam? Who was Mus'ab before Islam? So we read some narrations about who Mus'ab was. Mus'ab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, was, as they say, the man who had it all. He literally had it all. Anything you can think of from a dunya perspective, he had it. Anything you can think of. Wealth, status, fame, good looks, everything. Even things that, like we said, that things that are materialistic. From a dunya perspective, had everything. Dashing young man, smart. And there are narrations that further prove these points. When it comes to Mus'ab radiallahu anhu's wealth, the narrations say that Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu was so wealthy, was so rich, that every piece of clothing that he had was custom made. It was custom made for him. I want you to understand how rich that is. There is a certain level of rich where you can afford clothes. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, all of us here today fit in that category. We can afford to clothe ourselves. Alhamdulillah. A blessing from Allah. There's another level of rich where you get to a point where you can afford different styles of clothing. You get to have preference. I have enough wealth to be able to go to Walmart and pick any color shirt I want to wear. Long sleeve, short sleeve, words on it, no words on it, whatever I want. That's another level of wealth. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, most of us, if not all of us, fit in that category as well. There is another level of wealth on top of that, where now not only do you have preference in whatever it is that you want to buy, you get to buy things that are branded by different companies. So whether that company be a Nike or an Adidas or this, that, or the other, etc., different brands. Then there is another level of rich on top of that, where now not only do I have preference, not only can I clothe myself, not only do I have preference, not only can I buy name brand, but on top of that I can buy luxury name brand. Now my clothes have become a status symbol. I'm wearing my Gucci, my Armani, etc., my polos. My clothes have become a way for me to tell the world around me, look at who I am. Look at the money that I have. Unfortunately, this is a problem that we all suffer. Many of us suffer, maybe not. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all from pride. But that's another level of rich. There is a level of rich even on top of that, where someone is so rich that every piece of clothing that they have is custom made for them, one of a kind. No one else in the world has the same shirt that you have. That shirt was cut to fit your body, that's it. You designed it from the ground up. That's rich. Forget name brand. You get to a point where you can have custom clothes, that's well off. Mus'ab, radiallahu ta'ala, all of his clothes were custom. Very well off. So had the money. Had the status. The narrations say that Mus'ab, radiallahu ta'ala, actually before we get to status, he had the good looks too. He had the good looks to match the clothes. The narrations say, I'm not exaggerating, the narrations about Mus'ab, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, say that in his normal route through Mecca, the women would line up so that they could see him and smell him. it was known that he used to wear a very, very, very nice cologne. This is Mus'ab, obviously before Islam, right? And that sounds funny to some of us. But I want you to understand who now this person was. Where literally, the women would line up to accidentally bump into him on his way to work every single day. Mus'ab. On top of that, he had the status and the intellect. Mus'ab radiallahu anhu came from a society, a place, Quraysh, Mecca, that place, that time, where more than anything else, age and status was valued. More than even wealth. Status was valued. This is why people like the uncle of the Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam was respected in the community, even though he wasn't filthy rich. Ali radiallahu anhu's father. Because status was taken over everything else. Who your name was and things like that. And age above all of that. That if someone was an elder in the community, they were automatically respected. This is something that lives on till today in Arab cultures. Which is a good thing, alhamdulillah. Our deen teaches us to respect the elders in our community. Right? Anyone who's older than you, we're taught to respect them. Especially if you're a younger sibling. I'm just teasing the younger siblings in here. I have younger siblings, so I tell them that all the time. You guys have to kiss my hands. But this idea of respect was something that was connected to age in that culture, and even alive till to this day in that same culture. Now Mus'ab radiallahu anhu was not old. At the time where Mus'ab accepts Islam, he is about 16 to 18 years old. Literally a child. And he was on the council of advisors in the people of Quraysh for the city of Mecca. Status. He was respected not only amongst his peers, but amongst the people that were above him. The elders of the community would ask him for advice at 16. And now keep in mind, understand the society we're talking about here. We're not talking about a society that took pride in being progressive or politically correct or this, that. That's not the society we're talking about. This society used to literally, not figuratively, literally bury their daughters alive. We're not talking about the forefront of maturity in the world. We're not talking about enlightened people, whatever that means. They didn't take pride in this at all. It's not like, oh yeah, let's encourage the youth to be better. That's not what they did. And so for Mus'ab to be a part of that setting, he earned that spot due to his intellect. This is who Mus'ab was. Again, literally, young man had everything. At around the age of 16 to 18 years old, he accepts Islam. Now think about the kind of decision that makes. We're not talking about accepting Islam when it's easy, when it's simple, when it's just about salah. We're talking about accepting Islam at a time where Muslims were literally being tortured. Again, now we're not talking about social media gives you a bad name or the media is out to get you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about literal torture. They would tie an old woman up that was blind. They would tie her to a tree and put food next to her so that she could smell it. And wait there for 7 days and then feed her. An old lady, an old blind lady, they would tie her to a tree, radiallahu ta'ala anha. We're talking literal torture. Literal death, like there's no coming back. This is why, by the way, if you read the Quran, you understand that there's a difference between Meccan Quran and Madani Quran, right? Madani Quran is Quran that was revealed after the hijrah of the Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So any Quran that was revealed, it doesn't matter where it was revealed. It could have been revealed in Mecca after Fath Mecca. It could have been revealed anywhere else. But any Quran that came down after the hijrah is called Madani Quran. So if you look in Meccan Quran, Quran that was revealed pre-Hijrah, there is no reference to nifaq. There's no reference to hypocrisy, because that wasn't a thing. There was nothing that would convince someone to become Muslim other than the fact that I know this is the ultimate truth. As a matter of fact, all the odds were stacked against him. It was literal torture. There's no ayat of nifaq in Meccan Quran, because it wasn't a thing. And so Mus'ab makes that decision at around 16 to 18 years old. He makes a bigger decision in his life at 16 that most of us have made double and triple his age. Look at the wisdom of this young man. So now Mus'ab, he accepts Islam. And as usual for all the Muslims at that time, what follows is struggle. His mother found out about it a little bit later after that. And his mother locked him up in a dungeon. I'm not exaggerating. I don't mean like, he was in timeout in his bedroom, with his Nintendo Switch. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about literally locked up and chained up and beat. What we would consider literal torture in a dungeon. That his own mother did this to him. Radiallahu ta'ala anhu. He eventually escapes. And he hides away in Africa, where the Muslims migrate to, and then they come back later on. But Mus'ab radiallahu anhu now sacrificed all of this. And now look at where he grew into. He continues to grow and to improve throughout his life. He continues learning and improving when it comes to his deen, when it comes to his maturity and his level, his status, right? What he knows and what he's able to accomplish, to the point where the Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when it comes time to send someone to Yathrib, the city that we call Medina today, he sends on his behalf, on behalf of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on his behalf, he sends Mus'ab bin Umayr in his late teens as someone to speak on behalf of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the people of Yathrib. Now I want you to understand, once again, what that means. We're not just talking about a delegation to go speak, to the uncles and aunties in the community. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about sending a little kid to the side of the house where the women are sitting to tell them to go get food for dinner. We're not talking about that. We're talking about these people were tortured for over a decade of time. That's more than 10 years of literal torture. And the Prophet Muhammad is trying to find anywhere to find safety, to just pray in safety. And so the delegation, on his shoulders literally lie the future of Islam as a religion. The future of the Muslims as a whole. Because this life in Mecca cannot be sustained. Such a responsibility. And he does not send Abu Bakr, not Umar, not Ali, not Uthman. He sends Mus'ab bin Umayr. And we know Mus'ab bin Umayr radiallahu ta'ala does such a job that people like Sa'd accepted Islam underneath him. Now, to understand the level of the teacher, you have to understand the level of the student. One of the people that accepted Islam from Mus'ab, like I said, was Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, his student, right? Someone who accepted Islam from him. Sa'd, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, when Sa'd radiallahu ta'ala anhu passed away, the Prophet says, اهتز عرش الرحمن لموت سعد. It literally brings shivers. The Prophet Muhammad said that the throne of God shook at the death of Sa'd. person who brought him to Islam was Mus'ab bin Umair. A young man, 16 to 18 years old, he accepted Islam. At around this time, maybe around 19 to 20. The narration says that when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came to Medina, that droves of people, many people came to greet the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ when he enters into Medina. We all know the narrations, right? We all know the narrations that when the Prophet ﷺ comes to Medina, him and Abu Bakr, after their hijrah, many Muslims lined up to greet the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. I mean, imagine that view. But we sometimes forget how many Muslims were in Yathrib before Mus'ab. 0. At his hands, almost an entire city became Muslim. The effort that he set forth, alongside of his helpers, people that helped. Again, Muslim. Now, once again, I want to highlight the sacrifice that this young man set forth. The idea of working hard. Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala passed away in the Battle of Uhud. The narration mentions when Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala passed away. And what did I tell you? Where did he come from? He came from status, good looks, fame, and a lot of wealth. Very wealthy. Everything he owned was custom made. When Mus'ab radiallahu ta'ala anhu passes away, the narration says that he only owned one cloth, and it wasn't long enough to cover his whole body as a kafan. The narration says that when they would cover his face with the cloth, his feet would become uncovered. And when they pulled it down to cover his feet, his face would become uncovered. He didn't have enough cloth to cover his dead body. Literally sacrificing everything. Working hard. This is the definition of sacrifice. This is the definition of putting your best foot forward. And there's no limitation. Again, look at his age. Young man. For those of y'all that are young in here, take an example. The sky is the limit. Your life is what you make of it. And for those of us that are older, you haven't died yet. Your life is also what you make of it. You haven't died yet. If a young person can do this, then what can we do? We have resources. Alhamdulillah. And so now, but the question arises. This is the effort that we should set forth. Now, what do I set effort in? What does that effort look like? We know that he struggled, but now I want to put into words what his struggle was. The scholars mention the struggle or the effort of improving oneself when it comes to deen takes 2 steps. The first is takhliya, and the second is tahliya. Takhliya wa tahliya. These are the steps of cleaning oneself, of improving oneself when it comes to, especially from a deeni perspective. The first step, takhliya, which means to remove bad. Whatever bad habits or environment or people, whatever it may be, whatever bad thing that I may be involved in, to remove that and to take away from you. Take it out of your life. But that's only one step. It's not enough to say that I'm just going to remove the bad from my life. Because then you're just left with empty time. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to go crazy. That's why the next step is equally as important, and that's tahliya. Introducing good. These 2 things go hand in hand. Now, which one you start with is up to you. It's personal preference. For some people, it's easier to do tahliya, and that will force the tahliya. You introduce good into your life, and that will force out the bad. An example, let's say someone has a bad habit of going out at night, partying too late at night. So instead of stopping partying first, what they do is they come to the masjid for Isha. And they come to the masjid for Fajr. You can't come to the masjid for Fajr if you sleep late. It's not a thing. Trust me. Well, trust you too. You can't. And so maybe now for you, that's how you do it. You introduce tahliyah first. You bring the good in and that'll push out the bad. Or maybe you're the other kind of person that you do tahliyah first. You have discipline. You're a person that works off of discipline. So what you do is you remove the bad. You yank out the bad, and then in its place you introduce good. So you stop yourself out from going out too late. You remove the partying. Again, I'm not saying that everyone's partying. I'm just trying to give an example. Right? You remove the partying, and then when it comes to that empty time, then you introduce the good. You start coming to the masjid for salah. You start reading Quran, etc., etc. But these are the two steps. We learned the importance of struggling. And now, how do I struggle? How do I now, what's the first step that I take in struggling? In improving myself? Takhliyah wa tahliyah. Remove the bad and introduce the good. Or introduce the good and remove the bad. You can't just introduce good. You can't live your life the way you're living it and say, I'm just going to read more Quran. That's not enough. You read more Quran while also trying to take out the harm. You also can't just remove the harm and say you're going to be good. I'm going to stop doing X, Y, and Z, whatever your vice may be. I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm just going to focus on stopping doing wrong. You're going to go insane. Because you're going to have a lot of free time and you're not going to know what to do with it. So you remove the bad, but you have to fill that time. That's why, by the way, as parents, little parenting tip, they tell you don't tell your children, and don't always, sometimes it's necessary, but don't always negate your children 100%. Don't always stop them from doing things. Instead, what you should do is replace it with something good. So if a child says, if like a baby has your keys, your car keys, and they want to put it in their mouth, instead of taking it away and saying no, you take it away and you replace it with something that they can put in their mouth. This is how the human being operates. تخلية وتحلية. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, it is with this philosophy of tahliyah wa tahliyah and juhd, it is with this philosophy that we can improve. And it is with this philosophy that, alhamdulillah, we're working on improving the youth group that we have here at the Islamic Society of Tulsa at Masjid al-Salam. So we have things that provide, that facilitate the tahliyah. For example, the amazing playground that we just built out there. It's ridiculous. I mean, that thing, governments don't build playgrounds like that. They go to the public parks and their playgrounds aren't that nice. Alhamdulillah. It helps facilitate the tahliyah. We have the volleyball courts, the soccer fields, the basketball courts, all being renovated. Alhamdulillah. They have all already been renovated. Facilities. These things facilitate tahliyah. It's an opportunity for our youth to have somewhere to go. And then you have tahliyah, introducing the good. Insha'Allah, not this coming week, but the week after that, the third week of September. So starting the 24th of September and the 26th of September, we have classes for our youth, alhamdulillah, that I will be leading, insha'Allah. Right? So for our teens, we have on Tuesdays, which is the 24th of September, at 6 p.m., we'll be having a class for our teens, a practical guide to being Muslim in America. Advice from the Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For our teens starting, not this coming Tuesday, the Tuesday after that. On Thursdays at 7 p.m., we have our tafsir class for young professionals. So that's university students and up, 20s and 30s years of age, right? The young professionals. Like once again, going through the Quran to learn what it means to be a Muslim in America. That's an example of tahliyah. But there's one thing that I need to note as well. That is extremely important, and I'll address this even after the khutbah, after the salah rather. And I hope that you guys can give me a moment of your time. Mus'ab bin Umayr radiallahu ta'ala anhu can only be Mus'ab with the support of the community around him as well. It's a balance. Mus'ab needed to put in that effort and also needed to do the taqli and tahliyah. But at the same time, it's only possible with the support of the community around him. Mus'ab had a place to learn because of Darul Arqam, because of the house of Arqam, the place where the Muslims would gather to pray salah. Someone needed to facilitate. And so especially for us as adults, as those of us that maybe are past our youth, whatever that means, obviously, all of y'all are young at heart, alhamdulillah. But that is a key part as well, that we need to play in our communities. If we want to see our youth grow into the Mus'abs, it requires our backing, our facilitating. Like, for example, the playground, which is, again, A+, Jazakumullah khair. But that's what that requires. It requires the effort from the community. They say in the example, it takes a village to raise a child. That's us. As human beings, we are human beings of societies. A lot of times it is misunderstood that the root of the word insan is forgetfulness. Right? Is nisyan. That the root of the word human being is to forget, nisyan. That's incorrect. As a matter of fact, not necessarily incorrect, there's a difference of opinion. The overwhelming majority of linguists of the Arabic language, they say that the root of insan is anusa, which means to accompany. That part of being human being is that we work together, that we are societies. And so I urge all of you here today that try to help be that foundation, be that Darul Arqam, be that Abu Bakr, that Uthman, that help facilitate the Mus'abs to grow to what they became. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us all the ability and the strength to do the taqliyah and tahliyah in our lives. Ameen. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the ability to do juhd and to exercise effort in our lives. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts from us all our effort. Ameen. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He unites us all in the highest levels of Jannah, neighboring the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen. Rabbil Alameen. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين اللهم اجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر اللهم آمين إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون اذكروا الله يذكركم. Remember Allah and He will remember you. وَادْعُوهُ يَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Call out to Allah and He will answer you. وَلَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. And the remembrance of Allah is the greatest thing that each and every single one of us can do. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا تَصْنَعُونَ. And Allah is fully aware what each and every single one of us is doing. وَأَقِمُوا الصَّلَاةَ.